the first of all, I have to apologise because I am not a painter. I am not a painter. I'm an ex-medical doctor, if you like. I'm a healer, as distinct from a treater, and I use painting as one of my modalities of healing that I do for myself and for everyone I work with, and I encourage them to do it as well. So I would love nothing more than if you all went home and you did some of these, because anyone can do it. You just have to want to do it and do enough of it. You don't have to have any artistic skill at all, because I certainly do not have. Right. Now, I made a note and I forgot what I was going to talk about. Right. I completely, you put me off, you know. No, it was wonderful, it was wonderful. So I thought I'd tell you, many years ago, back about 1961, 62, I was in charge of the psychiatry wards of a VA hospital in Australia. And my job was to interview the new patients and allocate them to the junior doctors. And at lunchtime, I'd meet with the psychologist who'd also seen the patients, and we'd talk about them over lunch. And he said, "You're brilliant. You can smell a hallucination. You can sniff out a delusion." He said, "Wonderful." He said, "Did you know that this man played the piano?" I said, "No." "Did you know this one grew champion camellias?" I said, "No." He said, "You don't know any of the good things about your patients." I said, "Of course not. I'm a doctor." and many years later, one of my activities is with photography as a healing modality. I was in Nova Scotia, and I'm watching the sun come up over the shore. And I've got a rented car, thank God it was a rented car, and I back it in to what I think is a bit of dark grass. But it turns out to be a very deep pond. And the car is rocking like this. And I managed to get out of the car. I walked a few miles. I get hold of a tow truck. He comes down. He gets a chain. He puts it on the hook on the front of the car. 30 seconds, I'm out. And he says, "It's a good thing for you. You had 2 wheels on dry land." I said, it's the same with patients. They've all got 2 wheels in the mud, but they've always got 2 wheels on dry land. So if I can find out what the 2 wheels on dry land is, then I can help them positively. Not just, and I don't belittle this, to get over the particular illness, but become better, more integrated, more holistic people. And that's been my work, which has been with creativity. Now, back then, I was asked, I'll tell you, yesterday I was on television. Did anyone see the program? Good. Right. And they asked me, when did I start to think about life energy and healing in this way? And it went back, apart from some very fascinating healing experiences I had in myself when I was young, but when my first week or 2 as an intern was in neurosurgery. You know, you're just out of medical school, you're looking after neurosurgical patients. And there were 2 men, both 24, in adjoining beds, and at the same, with the same illness, both paraplegic, both 24, same diagnosis, same illness. They both at the same time developed a hospital infection. Same organism, same antibiotic. In a week, one was cured and one was dead. And I said to my supervisor, "How come?" He said, "Well, some have got it and some haven't got it." I said, "Well, what's it?" He says, "It." So back beginning of 1958, I said, this is what I should look at. What is this it? And everybody, no matter how disturbed they are, no matter how ill they are, they have this it. They have this it. We just had an old man, he just died 2 days ago. He's 90, about 90. I've known him for many years, so I treated quite a few members of his family. And he was always an incredible joker. And when he was in the army during the war, he would go to the USO clubs, you know, to pick up a chick there. And what he would do, he'd walk in, he'd sit down at the piano, and he'd play 2 bars of the Rachmaninoff Second Piano Concerto. 2 bars, which he'd memorise. He said, no, I can't go on, I'm too modest. That's all he knew was 2 bars. That's all he knew. And many years later, he developed bowel cancer. He was treated in Sloan Kettering by a very famous doctor. And for years, he was called, when they had a difficult cancer patient, he would be called in to tell jokes to the patients. And he said, I know it changed them. Now here he was in hospital in Long Island as we say, and I called him up on the phone and I said, remember the Rachmaninoff? And his daughter was there, said, he started to smile again. And he died 2 days or so later, a few days later, and maybe now he's still playing the whole Rachmaninoff now. but so I've always been, so since 1958, my interest has always been, how do I get these 2 wheels on dry land? How do I get the patients to do this? How do I get them to change? And in 1961, I was running the back wards of a chronic mental hospital. We had patients who'd been in there for literally sometimes 20, 30, 40 years. These were the dregs, the real back, and most of them locked. And I was the first doctor who'd been in there without an escort. And they're sitting out there literally just eating their own feces, a lot of them. And we had no psychiatric drugs. They were reserved for the good patients at the front of the hospital. And all the patients had was what's called White House mixture, which would make them defecate all the time. They couldn't get disturbed because they were defecating. That was the treatment. And so I managed to, there was a large building that hadn't been used for years. I got permission to set this up as a rehabilitation unit. And I got between 200 and 400 patients, all helping me to get this thing going, cleaning up feces and God knows what, dried feces on the floor and everything. And they started to change because someone got interested, because I saw that they had an it, that there was something else inside them. In fact, and we use a lot of music and other activities, but the most important thing is that I knew that they had an it. I knew that there was life energy, whatever word you want to call it, that was there in them if only we could start to mobilize it. And one of the ways is with creativity. We had a lady been in there for years, and all of a sudden she sits down, she starts playing Beethoven sonatas. I had a man who'd been tortured by the Chinese in the Korean War as a prisoner of war, and he hadn't spoken since. And one day he'd call me over to the piano and just sit there. But over a few weeks he'd call me over, he'd start to play, and he'd start to talk about his experiences in a concentration, in a POW camp. And I saw these changes. Now, come on, many years later, my mother has Alzheimer's disease. And here she is in a very, very high quality nursing home. But when we go to see her, Susan and I, we go visit her in Australia, and she's always doing this. I said, what is it? They say, oh, it's just repetitive fuck. It doesn't mean anything, she's just tapping. It doesn't mean anything. I said, no, there's a rhythm here. There's a rhythm here. So what happened is I put on cassette some of the 78 jazz records that I had when I was young that she used to tell me to turn off. Right. And we take it into her, and now all of her patting makes sense. She was singing in some way inside her head. We'd go there twice a year, and they'd say, she hasn't talked, she hasn't done anything since you were here. And Susan and I would play the castanets with her. Susan would get her up and start dancing with her. And she was dancing to this music. And she hadn't spoken in 6 months. And Susan would say, do you like dancing, Doris? And he'd say, it's marvelous. and be, as it were, completely in its own limited way, like normal. But no one would believe me. No one would believe that this woman still had all this there. Now, 6 months before she died, we went to visit her, and I took in my little grandson, who was a few months old. Remember, my mother hasn't spoken for 6 months. She can't feed herself, she can't wash herself or anything. She is demented, right? And you bring in this little baby, she says, "Oh, little darling." And she grabs the baby from me and she starts stroking it. "Little darling, little baby." And I couldn't get it away, away from her. She stroked it and stroked it. And so I said, let's get her a doll. So I got her a doll, and when she died, it was beside her bed, and she stroked off all the hair of her head. Now, so tell me, what is dementia? Tell me what's insanity. Tell me, these are people. And what's more, when we take away the superficial ego, which controls all of our lives, we see something deeper in that. We see their souls. That's what I saw with these chronic psychiatric patients. I had 200 to 400 of them, and I'm looking at people with no ego who are just showing you who they really are inside, which otherwise you don't see. And I love working with these people. I still wish I could, because they're so real. It's just who they really, really are. So that's what I've been doing now for, 50 or so years. And the biggest change, I think, occurred when I reached about 65 or so. Robert Koch. He discovered tuberculosis, the bacillus for tuberculosis. And he said, as a doctor gets older, his work should be not so much with individual patients, but with society. Because this way you may be more superficial, but you can spread it wider and maybe cause more changes to occur over a wider area. So increasingly over the years, I've encouraged in myself and in all the people I work with how to release this creativity. The essence of Buddhist teaching are the that's creativity, isn't it? No, is the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. The first truth is life for everybody is suffering. Life for everybody is anguish. And when you start to go beyond the disease, important as that is, and you start to look at the total person, you see the anguish. Have you ever seen the square miles of boats down there at San Diego? Why are they there? They're there for people to delude themselves that their lives are not anguish. We are living lives trying to pretend to ourselves that life really is very wonderful, where it's extremely rare to find somebody who can affirm, I enthusiastically, passionately, wholeheartedly and gratefully embrace all my life. And if it's less than that, we are in anguish. The first noble truth, we are in anguish. And what I learned years and years ago from these disturbed patients, these very deteriorated patients, is that their soul is right there on the surface. So in one sense, they were in great anguish. In another level, they were not at all. And to me, the answer to anguish, not that disease treatment isn't important, is to go deeper and to see what is do they have contact with their deepest self? You can use whatever word you like. The God within, the soul, the Buddha nature, the Chinese call it Jen. It doesn't matter. Every society has had such a word like that. And so what I'm trying to do in my work for many years now is to help people find their deepest self. Because that to me is holistic. We are not whole because we haven't got contact with this other part of ourselves, which is the soul. And until we realize that I, inside, have a soul, that I inside, whatever I may be doing on the outside, but inside I am perfection. Inside I am pure love, or whatever word you like. And if I am, you are. If they are, I am. And until we come to that, then I think everything else, valuable as it is, doesn't go deep enough. If I work with somebody with cancer, I do nothing about the physical disease. There's thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of doctors that can do much, much, much more than I can. I don't even try. But I want to work with the person. Who is that person that has come to this point in life that they develop the cancer? Who is that person? And I've done a lot of work on that. But it's all to do with the totality. Help a person find their soul. You may not cause them to live any longer, but they will live a lot happier. They will live not in anguish, which is so very, very important. Now, how many of, and this is California, how many of you here meditate on a regular sort of basis? Oh, wonderful. Now, why do you meditate? Makes you feel better. Okay. To connect with the spirit. Okay. Now, concentrate. Okay. These are wonderful California words. Yes. Right. Yeah. Now, the Dogen, one of the great Zen masters, said that the purpose of meditation is to go inside yourself and find your soul. Don't become the Buddha, but realize that you already are. Now, I think that's very self-centered. I'm now going to meditate because I want to be a good boy, or I want to know that I'm a good boy. I think it's better to meditate to find that other people are good boys and good girls, and therefore I am as well. To go out, to come in, which is what these paintings are in a sense. Go out to the painting and let it come in. Go out to let it come in. And so I meditate specifically for it to be a healing experience.